With South Korea's politics in chaos, what's at stake for the region? On January the 7th, the Seoul Western District Court reissued an arrest warrant for impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol after the Corruption Investigation Office, or CIO, which is leading the probe, failed to detain Yoon following a dramatic standoff. While the country is in political turmoil, the world is keeping a close watch on the situation to see how events unfold. On December the 24th, 10 days after Yoon was impeached, South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul called his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to talk about bilateral ties. Wang noted that China and ROK are friendly neighbors and important cooperative partners, and that ties have shown momentum of improvement and development. Cho said on his part, the ROK cherished the current sound momentum of ties and remains unchanged in its position of promoting the sustainable development of bilateral strategic cooperative partnership. How could the political chaos potentially affect Northeast Asia? With President Trump taking office in just a few days, what can we expect in the near future? I'm pleased to be joined from Ohio, the U.S. by Robert Kelly, Professor of Political Science at Busan National University. From Kunshan, China South, Jiangsu Province by Professor John Quelch, Executive Vice Chancellor at Duke Kunshan University, and of course Victor Gao here in the studio. Gentlemen, welcome. Professor Kelly, let me go to you first. So South Korea's political chaos has lasted for over a month, and as I said, the standoff threatens to spiral. What's next in the country's political uncertainty?
I would imagine that these arrest warrants, there's been one before, and it looks like there will be another coming now. In fact, there just was released. I imagine these arrest warrants will not return the physical arrest of the president. I think that's a bridge too far, that it would provoke street violence. I think that's pretty clear at this point. I don't, on the other hand, think that that's particularly important, because I do think the Constitutional Court will verify the impeachment and he will be removed. He'll probably wind up in jail. There was an impeachment in South Korea 8 years ago of a president for crimes less egregious than that committed now. Yoon's crimes, or alleged crimes, were committed on television. The whole world watched them. I would be amazed if Yoon was not, the impeachment was not verified, if he was not impeached and removed. Probably in the next 2 months, probably, I would guess by the end of February. And then there'll be an election after that. And so I would imagine you'll have a new government, a progressive president, probably by the end of the spring, maybe by May.
What is your prediction? Because you are really, someone who has been watching this for very long. What is your prediction for the implication of the situation of the upcoming period of uncertainty for the region? Is this going to be a ship without a clear captain?
Regional, I actually don't. Maybe I'm sort of the outlier here, but I actually think the regional strategic implications are low, because I don't actually think this throws into question South Korea's basic strategic orientation. I don't think, for example, that South Korea is going to defect on the U.S. alliance because of this, or that the two Koreas will have some kind of rapprochement or something like that. I don't think that China will sense some moment of opportunity to exploit South Korea. I just don't see any of those in the way. It's possible if this goes on for 6 months or something like that, right? And if there's a year-long stalemate, I suppose it's possible that outside players could see an opportunity to intervene. But I don't really see that coming. I actually think the real implications are economic, which is to say that the South Korean economy will be pulled down. We know that the won has slipped, South Korean currency has slipped, and I would imagine that foreign investment will pull back because people will be afraid. I would imagine that would include Chinese investors. But I don't actually think that there's a major strategic fallout from this, because at this moment it's still only a month. I mean, I don't actually think this is a crisis spinning out of control. Not yet. It's worse than I think we all expected, but it's not. The country's not falling apart.
Let's put it this way. Okay. Vice Chancellor, Professor Quelch, what is your analysis and prediction of the situation? How big and what kind of impact will it have on relations between ROK and China, and possibly with Japan and with the United States? We understand that the outgoing U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and the Foreign Minister of South Korea Cho Tae-yul met each other on January the 6th, 2 days ago, and both sides asserted that the alliance between the countries remains strong despite ongoing political turmoil. Why is Blinken going there now?
Blinken is on a swan song tour. It's probably his last foreign trip. It's the fourth time that he's visited South Korea. South Korea is a very important ally of the United States, as is Japan. In the last year, there's been considerable progress from a U.S. point of view in bringing South Korea and Japan closer together in terms of a bit more of a rapprochement and some collaboration on intelligence sharing, for example. Very much consistent with the previous guest. South Korea has a long history of having slightly irregular personality disorders among its leadership that can result in impeachment or in even more severe retributions. And so I don't really see this as being especially irregular. It is embarrassing, I think, to the Biden administration since they had promoted the collaboration with President Yoon quite extensively. But I don't think that it's going to undermine, as was said, the resilience of the South Korean economy. I don't see much of a challenge to regional stability from this slightly odd behavior by the current or currently I suppose he is still currently officially the president, though we have acting President Choi taking the reins.
Victor, what is your take from the Chinese perspective? Well, Mr. Wang Yi has taken a very positive tone when he was talking to his South Korean counterpart, but China has expressed grievances. For instance, when Mr. Yoon was, talking about China in a certain manner that's not really pleasing to the Chinese ear. But how do you look at the kind of experience that we have seen over the past 4 years under the Biden administration, under Mr. Yoon, and what do you expect when President Trump will come into the office? Will there be some radical difference, or will some things already be locked in that's too much to change?
First of all, this current constitutional crisis in ROK is self-inflicted, mostly by President Yoon himself and some people immediately around him. And now it's degenerating into a farce. And the sooner it is over, the better for Mr. Yoon, for the family, for South Korea as a whole, and for peace and stability, not only on the Korean Peninsula, but also in East Asia and beyond. Now, Mr. Yoon has been very active in promoting the so-called US ROK Japan alliance to such an extent that he went to, in my judgment, extreme in confronting DPRK on many occasions, or even using very extreme terms, thus causing the escalation of tension on the Korean Peninsula. This in itself, in my best judgment, is not good for ROK or for regional peace and stability. And I think President Biden and his administration, including Blinken, etc., have been going out probably on the limb, try to reinforce, in quotation mark, the alliance between the United States, ROK, and Japan, mainly with the purpose of confronting China. But the reality is that most of the people in ROK and the companies in ROK do not want to have a very confrontational and hostile relations with China. They want to have peace with China. And I think the fiasco that ROK is suffering from now by the intransigence of this President Yoon is an indication that not a lot of people buy his version of the story, and the sooner he's out, the better.
Well, that's your personal opinion, of course, and Mr. Wang reiterated that China sticks with the policy of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs. But I do want to go back to Professor Kelly, and I give you 1 minute, if I may. What do you expect will happen under President Trump? He has not taken the approach as a conventional U.S. president, strengthening alliances. Rather, he was beating up the U.S. alliance, calling on them to pay more, for instance, and pay for U.S. protection. What do you expect to happen under President Trump?
I would expect more of the same. If Trump pays attention to North Korea or to the Korean Peninsula, Trump has a tendency to sort of wander off and talk about all kinds of things, like apparently Greenland and the Panama Canal are a big issue now in the president's mind. If he rotates back to Korea, I would imagine that he will once again buddy up to the North Korean leader and he will pressure South Korea. I think after President Yoon is removed and South Korea has a new president, that will almost certainly be a president from the left who will not care for Trump much. And I would anticipate a significant period of U.S. South Korean tension in the future. I would imagine that there'll be pressure in South Korea for more strategically independent line. For example, South Korea's thought of building an aircraft carrier. I would imagine you'll see more of that. I think the relationship is going to be quite rocky under Donald Trump.
Well, we'll definitely keep a close watch on the situation. Many thanks to my guests, especially to Professor Kelly, who joined us late at night. Thank you so much for that. And of
Thanks
course,
for having me.
Professor John Quelch for coming back, Executive Vice Chancellor at Duke Kunshan University, and Victor Gao, Chair Professor at Suzhou University, a renowned current affairs commentator. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for joining us. You've got The Point.